My son, Jamal, had been in a coma for 2 weeks following a horrific motorcycle accident. I spent every night by his bedside, holding his hand, praying for a miracle. His wife, Serena, hadn't shown up even once in 14 days. Her first excuse was, "I need time to process this." I desperately wanted to believe her. On the 15th day, a neighbor sent me an Instagram screenshot. It showed Serena in a bikini in South Beach, Miami, smiling brightly next to another man. 2 hours later, the neurologist called me in. Serena had just arrived at the City General Hospital, carrying legal documents to disconnect Jamal's life support. What she didn't know was that I am a retired forensic accountant. While others were praying, I was investigating. I uncovered transfers totaling $320,000 and a $600,000 life insurance policy taken out just 1 week before the accident. Over the next 48 hours, I systematically dismantled a scheme so cold it would shock anyone. The following is a common content call to action adapted to the narrative flow. This story will show you how life can be saved with courage and irrefutable evidence. My name is Charles Henderson, but everyone calls me Charlie. For 38 years, I was a forensic accountant specializing in rooting out corporate fraud and money laundering. I retired 5 years ago with the satisfaction of having helped prosecute over 50 white-collar criminals. I never imagined my sharpest skills would be needed to save my own son. It all began 17 days ago. It was a Friday night when I got the call no parent ever wants. "Is this Charles Henderson, father of Jamal Henderson?" "Yes, that's me. What happened?" "I'm Dr. Alicia Reed from the City General Hospital. Your son was in a motorcycle accident. You need to come immediately." The drive to the hospital was a blur of contained panic. Jamal, my only child, 32 years old, a brilliant software engineer, with a whole life ahead of him. He'd married Serena just 2 years prior, a woman who had struck me as calculating from the moment I met her. When I arrived at the emergency room, Dr. Reed pulled me aside. Her professional but compassionate expression prepared me for the worst. "Your son was hit by a truck that ran a red light on the Grand Central Parkway. He has severe cranial trauma, a fractured clavicle, 3 broken ribs, and pulmonary contusions. We've placed him in a medically induced coma to protect his brain from swelling. Is he going to survive?" She placed a hand on my shoulder. "The next few days are critical, but he's young. He's in good physical shape. He has a fighting chance. Right now, he needs you to be strong for him." I was led into the intensive care unit. Nothing in my life had prepared me to see my son this way. Jamal, always so vibrant and full of energy, lay motionless in that bed. Tubes ran into his mouth and arms. The ventilator rose and fell with a mechanical rhythm that now marked every beat of his heart. I sat down and took his hand. It was still warm. He was still my son. "I called Serena," the nurse said, entering with a clipboard. "She's on her way." I waited 2 hours, then 3, then 4. Serena never showed. Finally, near midnight, she answered my call. "Charlie?" Her voice was muffled, as if she'd been crying. "How is he?" "He's stable. He's in a coma." "Serena, you need to come here." I can't see him like that." "It's too much, Charlie. I need time to process this." "He's your husband." "I know." Her voice rose. "You think I don't know that? But if I go in there and see him hooked up to all those machines, I'll fall apart. I can't. I need to be strong for when he wakes up. I need time." She hung up before I could respond. Something felt wrong, but submerged in my own grief and fear, I chalked it up to shock. People react in strange ways to trauma, or so I told myself. I settled into a routine that became my new reality. Every morning, I arrived at the hospital at 7 a.m., sat next to Jamal, read him the newspaper, and told him stories from his childhood. The doctors say coma patients can sometimes hear. Dr. Marcus Bell, the lead neurologist, was a man in his 50s with endless patience for explaining every detail of Jamal's condition. The brain swelling is decreasing, he told me on the 5th day. That's good, very good. His body is responding to the treatment. Now it's a matter of time. How much time? It's impossible to know for sure. It could be days, weeks. Every patient is different. But there is reason to be hopeful, Mr. Henderson. Serena still hadn't appeared. She called once a day, always with the same story. She was processing. She was devastated. She couldn't bear to see him like that. Her calls grew shorter, more mechanical. It was my neighbor, Tasha, who showed me the first sign that something was deeply wrong. It was the 8th day. I had come home only to shower and change clothes. Tasha knocked on my door with a worried expression. Charlie, I hate to be the one to show you this, but I think you need to see it. She handed me her phone. It was a social media post from Serena, dated 2 days ago. The photo showed her at an upscale restaurant, wine glass in hand, smiling. The caption read, "Sometimes you need to remember that life goes on. Self-care is important." I checked the date. It was from day 3 after the accident. While I sat vigil by my son's bed, she was having dinner at a 5-star joint. There's more, Tasha said softly, swiping the screen. Another photo, Serena at a spa. Much needed relaxed day. And another, Serena with friends at a bar. Friends are everything. All posted within the last 5 days. A cold, hard lump settled in my stomach. This wasn't grief. This wasn't someone struggling to cope with trauma. This was someone who had already moved on. Thank you, Tasha, I said, handing back her phone. I needed to see this. That night, sitting next to Jamal in the silence of the ICU, I made a decision. I was going to investigate. If there was one thing I had learned in 4 decades as a forensic accountant, it was that when people act strangely, they're usually hiding something. And my instinct, sharpened by years of exposing lies, screamed that Serena was hiding much more than simple grief. The next day, I began my systematic and methodical investigation. Jamal had given me access to his primary bank accounts years ago when he bought his home. Just in case something ever happens to me, Dad, he'd said. I never thought I'd have to use that access like this. I sat in the small hospital coffee shop with my laptop, connecting to the Wi-Fi and logging into Jamal's banking portal. At first, everything looked normal. Mortgage payments, utilities, credit cards. But then I noticed something odd. There was an investment account that, when I last saw it, held a balance of approximately $400,000. Jamal's life savings and the profits from selling stock in his tech startup. Now, the balance showed only $78,200. More than $320,000 had vanished. The air left my lungs. I checked the transaction history with trembling hands. The transfers had begun 3 months ago, small at first. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. Then larger amounts, $50,000, $80,000. The most recent one, for $120,000, had been made exactly 10 days ago, 3 days before Jamal's accident. Each transfer was labeled with generic descriptions: real estate investment, emergency fund, home renovation. But when I traced the destination account numbers, None belonged to recognized institutions. They were personal accounts. My professional training took over. I captured screenshots of everything. I downloaded full statements. I created a spreadsheet detailing every transfer, date, and amount. Then I dug deeper. I found something that chilled my blood. An automatic transfer programmed to execute upon the death of the account holder. $300,000 would be automatically transferred to an offshore shell account in the Cayman Islands. This was no longer just suspicious. This was evidence of a crime in preparation. But the most devastating discovery came when I decided to check Jamal's email. He used the same password for almost everything, a habit I'd always warned him to change. Now, that carelessness would be his salvation. I found a deleted files folder that Jamal had never emptied, and there, like a gift from the universe, were the emails Serena thought she had erased forever. Messages between her and someone named D on an anonymous Gmail account. The first was from 4 months ago. D: how much longer do we have to wait? I hate pretending I love him. It makes me sick every time he touches me. Serena: patience, my love. The plan is working. I've moved almost half of it. In 6 more months, we'll have everything, and we can disappear together. He doesn't even suspect a thing. I kept reading. Each message, a knife deeper into my heart. D: what if he notices the transfers? Serena: he won't. He's a nerd obsessed with his work. He never checks the finances. I handle everything. D: I love you. I can't wait until it's just you and me on that beach in the Caribbean. Serena: soon, my love. Very soon, the millionaire nerd will just be a bad memory, and we'll be rich and free. I forced myself to continue, though every word was poison. The last email was from 2 weeks ago, just before the accident. Serena: change of plans. I got something better. A $600,000 life policy. If something happened to him, it would be much faster than waiting to drain the accounts little by little. What are you saying, Serena? Nothing. Just that sometimes the universe gives you opportunities, and you have to be ready to take them. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking uncontrollably. It wasn't just theft. It wasn't just infidelity. There was a $600,000 life insurance policy, taken out without Jamal's knowledge, and that cryptic message about opportunities, sent days before my son nearly died in an accident. I needed to know more. I needed to verify that policy. I called an old colleague, Rob Stone, who now worked as an insurance fraud investigator. Charlie, long time. What do you need? Rob, I need you to verify if a life insurance policy exists in the name of my son, Jamal Henderson. Sure, give me a minute. I heard his keyboard clicking. Here it is. Metropolitan Life Assurance, $600,000 term policy. Beneficiary, Serena Miller Henderson, wife. The policy was activated. He paused. 11 days ago, 6 days before the accident. Who took it out? It says here it was an online application, digitally signed, by both spouses. My son is in a coma, Rob. I guarantee you he didn't sign anything. There was a heavy silence on the line. Charlie, what's really going on? Insurance fraud, Rob. Possibly something much worse. I need you to document all of this and send it to me, officially. I'll do it. And Charlie, be careful. If what you suspect is true, you're dealing with someone very dangerous. I hung up and returned to Jamal's room. I sat by his bed, holding his still hand, watching the steady rhythm of the heart monitor. I'm going to protect you, I whispered. I won't let her hurt you. I promise. I didn't know then how quickly I would have to keep that promise. It was the morning of day 15 when everything exploded. I was in the hospital cafeteria, sipping my third cup of coffee and reviewing more bank statements on my laptop, when my phone vibrated. It was a message from Tasha, my neighbor. "Charlie, I'm so sorry. I think you need to see this." Attached was the Instagram screenshot. The image hit me like a physical punch to the gut. Serena was on a beach, clearly South Beach, Miami, with that unmistakable turquoise water. She wore a tiny red bikini that probably cost more than a nurse's monthly salary. Her Gucci sunglasses, the ones Jamal had gifted her for their last anniversary, were pushed onto her perfectly styled hair. In her right hand, she held a margarita, the salt glittering on the rim of the glass. Her left arm was wrapped around the waist of a young, muscular, tanned man. I recognized him immediately. Dwayne Johnson, the personal trainer Jamal had hired for both of them 6 months ago, the D from the emails. But what turned my shock into icy fury was the caption, "Life is short. Live your best life. Miami vibes. #blessed, posted 2 hours ago." I checked the date on my phone. Day 15. My son had been fighting for his life in a hospital bed for exactly 15 days, and his wife was celebrating on a beach with her lover. I immediately saved the screenshot. More evidence for the mounting pile of proof of her betrayal. I was about to call Rob Stone to update him on this new atrocity when my phone rang. It was Dr. Bell. "Mr. Henderson, I need you to come to my office immediately." The tone of his voice made me run. When I arrived at his office, I found Dr. Bell standing next to his desk, his expression tight and worried. Next to him was a woman I didn't recognize. Impeccable gray business suit, leather briefcase, cold in a professional expression. "Mr. Henderson, this is Attorney Celeste Vance, or Serena," Dr. Bell said. "She represents your daughter-in-law, Serena Miller Henderson." The woman extended her hand. I didn't shake it. "Where is Serena?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "My client prefers not to be present at this time," the attorney said, her voice as cold as her eyes. "She is too emotionally affected." "She's in Miami," I stated flatly. "I saw her on Instagram 2 hours ago." The attorney didn't blink. "Grief processes are personal, Mr. Henderson. My client has chosen to process her pain in the manner she deems appropriate." "Grief," I repeated the word like venom. "My son isn't dead. He's in room 4012 fighting for his life." "Precisely why we're here," she said, opening her briefcase and pulling out a thick folder. "My client, as Jamal Henderson's legal wife and holder of his medical power of attorney, has made the difficult decision to request the disconnection of life support." The world stopped. "What?" Dr. Bell intervened, his voice full of professional discomfort. "Mr. Henderson, legally, your daughter-in-law is correct. She is your son's medical proxy. The document was signed when they married." "I presented all of the documentation this morning," the attorney continued, placing papers on the doctor's desk. "A valid medical power of attorney, signed by both parties, which clearly states that in case of incapacitation, Serena Miller has the exclusive authority to make medical decisions on behalf of her husband." I took the documents with shaking hands. There it was, in black and white. The notarized, legal, binding signatures of Jamal and Serena. "My client is requesting that her husband be allowed to die with dignity," the attorney said. "She has consulted with other specialists who agree that Jamal's quality of life, even if he were to wake up, would be severely compromised." "That's a lie," I said, looking at Dr. Bell. "You told me there was reason to be hopeful, that the swelling was decreasing." Dr. Bell looked trapped between his medical ethics and the law. "Mr. Henderson, it's true. There are positive signs. But it's also true that we cannot guarantee a full recovery. Brain damage is unpredictable. Then we wait, I said firmly. We wait for him to wake up. And we decide then. The attorney shook her head. My client has made her decision, and she has the legal right to do so. Unless you can present a valid legal reason to object, the hospital is obligated to comply with her request. I looked at the documents again. Then I looked at Dr. Bell. How much time do I have? Legally, the attorney interjected before the doctor could answer. We could proceed immediately, but in consideration of you as the father, my client is willing to wait 72 hours to allow you to say goodbye. 72 hours. 3 days to save my son's life. Thank you for your generosity, I said, the sarcasm dripping from every word. But this isn't over. I walked out of that office with a chilling clarity in my mind. I was no longer simply investigating. I was in a race against time. A race to save my son's life against a woman who clearly wanted him dead, and I had exactly 72 hours to win it. I left the hospital and went straight to my car. Once inside, with the doors locked, I allowed myself a moment of sheer panic. My hands trembled. My breathing was shallow. The world seemed to tilt precariously. But I only permitted myself that moment, 60 seconds of pure fear. Then, the discipline of 4 decades as a forensic accountant took over. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I had been saving for this exact moment. Jessica Chen, the best litigation attorney I knew, and more importantly, one of the few people I trusted absolutely. Charlie, what is it? Is Jamal okay? Her voice was alert, professional. No, and I need your help now. Tell me where you are. I'm coming over. We met in a quiet cafe, 2 blocks from the hospital. Jessica arrived in 20 minutes, her briefcase in hand, her expression a mask of professional concentration. For the next hour, I told her everything. The accident, Serena's absence, the money transfers, the emails with Dwayne, the insurance policy taken out days before the crash, and finally, the request to disconnect life support. Jessica listened without interruption, taking precise notes in her yellow legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, her fingers drumming thoughtfully on the table. Charlie, what you have here isn't just a nasty divorce case. This is conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and possibly, she paused significantly, something much worse. Do you think she caused the accident? I can't prove it with what you have now, but the timing is suspicious. Very suspicious. Insurance policy taken out 6 days before the crash. Accelerated transfers in the weeks leading up to it. And now, with him unconscious and unable to defend himself, she wants to pull the plug. Jessica opened her briefcase and pulled out her laptop. First things first, we need a restraining order from a judge to prevent the hospital from disconnecting that life support. I'm filing an emergency motion this afternoon, arguing that there's evidence of a conflict of interest and potential fraud. That should work. It will buy us time, maybe a week, perhaps 2, if we're lucky. But Charlie, to win this permanently, we need more than suspicion. We need rock-solid proof of criminal intent. I have the emails, the transfers. That's good. Very good. But we need more. We need to show that this accident was no accident. We need to connect Serena directly to an action that put Jamal in danger. How do we do that? Jessica closed her laptop and looked me straight in the eye. We need her to incriminate herself. We need to record her admitting her intentions. And for that, we need her to let down her guard. A plan began to form in my mind. A risky but necessary plan. How fast can you get that restraining order? If I file now, I could get an emergency hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning. Do it, And in the meantime, I'll get the extra proof we need. Charlie, Jessica's voice softened. Be careful. If Serena is capable of what you suspect, she's not going to react well when she finds out you're investigating her. I'm counting on it, I said, my voice cold and determined. I want her to react. I want her to make a mistake. Jessica delivered on her promise. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. the next day at the County Civil Courtroom 3. I arrived 30 minutes early, dressed in my best suit. If I was going to fight for my son's life, I was going to do it with all the dignity and professionalism I could muster. Serena arrived precisely on time, accompanied by her attorney, Ms. Vance. I was surprised to see her in person after her Miami getaway. I guessed her lawyer had warned her that her absence from the hearing would look bad. She was dressed in black, appropriately somber for a grieving wife, but her South Beach tan was unmistakable. And when our eyes met briefly, I didn't see grief. I saw cold calculation. Judge Evelyn Hayes, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and a reputation for being fair but inflexible, entered and we all stood. Be seated, she said, opening the file in front of her. I understand this is an emergency restraining order request to prevent the disconnection of life support for Mr. Jamal Henderson. Attorney Chen, you have the floor. Jessica stood up. Her presentation was flawless. Your Honor, we are here because there is substantial evidence of a conflict of interest and potential criminal intent on the part of Mrs. Serena Miller Henderson. My client, the patient's father, has uncovered unauthorized financial transfers totaling over $320,000, a life insurance policy taken out without the insured's knowledge days before his accident, and electronic communications suggesting a conspiracy to defraud. Attorney Vance immediately stood up. Objection, Your Honor. These are baseless accusations designed to defame my client, a devoted wife who is making the most difficult decision of her life. Be seated, Counselor, Judge Hayes said firmly. Attorney Chen, do you have documented evidence of these allegations? Yes, Your Honor. Jessica placed a thick folder on the judge's bench. Bank statements showing unauthorized transfers, copies of emails between Mrs. Henderson and a third party discussing plans to empty the accounts and disappear together, and documentation of the $600,000 life insurance policy taken out without the insured's knowledge. Judge Hayes took the folder and began reviewing the documents. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. I could hear the wall clock ticking, marking every second of my son's life. After what felt like an eternity, the judge looked up. Attorney Vance, are you prepared to respond to these allegations? Serena leaned over and whispered something to her attorney. I saw Ms. Vance's expression harden slightly. Your Honor, my client categorically denies any wrongdoing. The money transfers were for legitimate investments approved by her husband. The emails are taken out of context, and the insurance policy was a joint decision made by both spouses as part of their marital financial planning. Taken out of context? Jessica interjected, her voice sharp. How do you take the phrase, the millionaire nerd will just be a bad memory, out of context? That's enough. The judge struck her gavel. Attorney Chen, save your rhetoric for trial. Attorney Vance, your client will have the opportunity to defend herself properly in a full proceeding. She leaned back in her chair, her fingers drumming thoughtfully on the desk. This is an extraordinarily delicate situation. On the one hand, Mrs. Henderson has the legal right as the medical proxy. On the other hand, there is sufficient evidence of a conflict of interest that warrants investigation. She paused, looking directly at Serena. Mrs. Henderson, is it true you were in Miami while your husband was in intensive care? Serena went pale. Her lawyer began to object, but the judge raised a hand. It's a simple question, Counselor, yes or no. I needed time to process, Serena began, her voice small. Yes, or no? Yes. The judge nodded, her expression hardening. Here is my decision. I am granting a temporary restraining order prohibiting the City General Hospital from disconnecting Mr. Jamal Henderson's life support for a period of 30 days. During that time, a full investigation will be conducted into the allegations presented by Mr. Charles Henderson. Your Honor, this is an outrage, Attorney Vance protested. This is justice, Counselor, the judge replied firmly. If your client has nothing to hide, the investigation will prove it. But I will not allow a patient's life support to be disconnected when there are such serious questions about the motivations of the decision-maker. Court adjourned. The gavel fell with a final sound that resonated like victory in my ears. Jessica and I left the courtroom together. In the hallway, she allowed me a moment of relief. 30 days, I said. 30 days to prove she's a killer, Jessica added softly. Or for Jamal to wake up. That would be the best evidence of all. I glanced back and saw Serena leaving the room with her attorney. Our eyes met for a second, and in that second, I saw something that froze my blood. It wasn't fear. It wasn't guilt. It was pure, cold rage. I had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Jessica hired a private investigator, Mark Dixon, a former state police detective with connections in all the right places. Meanwhile, I dove deeper into the financial aspects of the case. What I uncovered was even more disturbing than I had imagined. Sitting in my home study, surrounded by printed bank statements and spreadsheets, I began tracing the complete flow of the money. The transfers from Jamal's accounts hadn't gone directly to the Cayman Islands. That would have been too obvious. Instead, Serena had created a network of shell companies. First, the money was wired to a consulting firm registered in Delaware. From there, it moved to an investment firm in Nevada. Then it crossed the border to an account in Panama before finally landing in the offshore bank in the Cayman Islands. It was a classic money laundering scheme designed to lose the paper trail in a labyrinth of legal jurisdictions. But Serena had made a mistake. A small but fatal one. One of the shell companies, Global Strategic Consulting LLC, had to have a registered agent. And that agent, according to the documents I found at the State Business Registry, was Dwayne Johnson, the personal trainer, the lover, the D from the emails. I called Mark immediately. I found the direct connection between Serena and Dwayne. He's an official co-conspirator. His name is on legal documents. Excellent, Mark's voice sounded satisfied. That gives me justification to put him under close surveillance. I'll put someone on him 24/7. Anything else on your end? As a matter of fact, yes. I got something interesting from the mechanic's garage where Jamal's motorcycle was stored after the accident. What did you find? The brakes had been tampered with. It wasn't obvious. That's why the initial police report missed it. But the mechanic who checked the bike showed me something. The front brake cable had been filed down, not broken by the impact. It was intentionally weakened to fail under pressure. I felt the world tilt slightly. Are you saying someone sabotaged his motorcycle? That's exactly what I'm saying. I got the mechanic to sign a sworn affidavit. He also took detailed photos of the cable. Who had access to the bike? According to the records at the condo building where Jamal lives, only 3 people have access to the parking garage. Him, Serena, and the maintenance staff. But there's something else. Tell me. I reviewed the building's security cameras. In the days before the accident, there is footage of Dwayne Johnson entering the garage with Serena. They were there for 47 minutes at 2 a.m. The picture was clear. Serena had taken Dwayne into the garage. He had the technical know-how. He was a personal trainer. But I later discovered he had previously worked as a motorcycle mechanic. They had sabotaged Jamal's motorcycle. It wasn't an accident. It was attempted murder. Mark, I need those recordings. All of them. Already got them. And there's more. I found the security guard who was on duty that night. For $500, he told me Serena paid him $5,000 to forget. He saw anything that night. He's also willing to testify. The pieces were falling into place. We had the financial motive. We had the conspiracy emails. We had evidence of sabotage. And now we had witnesses. Mark, you've done a brilliant job. Just doing my job, Charlie. But be careful. These people already tried to kill your son once. They won't stop just because you've discovered them. He was right. And that night, I would discover exactly how dangerous they truly were. It was 11 p.m. when I heard the glass shatter in my kitchen. I was in my study, reviewing documents one last time, when the sound made me jump out of my chair. I ran toward the kitchen and found the window broken, glass scattered across the tiled floor, and amidst the glass, wrapped around a brick, was a note. With trembling hands, I unwrapped the paper. The message was written with letters cut out from magazines, like something from a B-movie mob film. Stop investigating, or the next accident will be yours. Last warning. I called the police immediately. They arrived in 20 minutes, took photos, and bagged the brick as evidence. But the officer in charge, a young man who looked barely out of the academy, looked at me with ill-concealed skepticism. Mr. Henderson, do you have any idea who might have done this? My daughter-in-law, I said flatly. She's trying to intimidate me into dropping the investigation. Your daughter-in-law. The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. And why are you investigating her? Because she tried to kill my son to collect a $600,000 life insurance policy. Skepticism turned into disbelief. Mr. Henderson, that is a very serious accusation. Do you have proof? 30 pages of proof, bank transfers, emails, evidence of mechanical sabotage, everything. Then you should file a formal complaint. I already did. There's an active case in county civil court. The officer took a few more notes, but I could see he wasn't taking me seriously. To him, I was just a paranoid old man having family problems. After they left, I called Mark. I need protection. Serena is escalating. I'm on my way. And Charlie, this is good. Good? How can being threatened be good? Because they're scared. Desperate people make mistakes. And when they make their next mistake, we're going to be ready to catch it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room with the lights off, watching the street through the curtains, waiting for something. Another brick, an unfamiliar car, a shadow in the yard. But nothing came. The message had been sent. The question was, would I give up? The answer, of course, was no. Not when my son's life was at stake. It was the morning of day 23 when I received the call that changed everything. I was home, drinking coffee and reviewing Mark's latest report, when my phone rang. It was Dr. Bell. Mr. Henderson, you need to come to the hospital now. My heart stopped. What happened? He's awake. Charlie, Jamal is awake. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. I only remember running down the ICU corridors, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. When I entered his room, there he was, my son, Jamal, sitting up in bed, still connected to monitors, but his eyes were open, alive, conscious. Dad. His voice was hoarse, weak, but it was his voice. I rushed to his bedside and took his hand, tears streaming freely down my cheeks. Son, my son, I thought I'd lost you. What happened? He asked, confused. Where is Serena? The question hit me like cold water. I had to tell him. I had to tell him everything. Jamal, there are things you need to know about Serena, about the accident. Dr. Bell intervened gently. Mr. Henderson, your son just woke up from a coma. He needs rest, not stress. Doctor, with all due respect, my son needs to know that his wife tried to kill him. Jamal blinked, processing my words. What, Dad? What are you talking about? For the next hour, with Dr. Bell reluctantly allowing me to stay, I told Jamal everything. The emails, the money transfers, Dwayne, the insurance policy, the motorcycle sabotage, the attempt to disconnect life support. I watched every emotion cross his face. Disbelief, denial, hurt, and finally, a cold, hard acceptance. All this time, he said softly, all this time, I thought I loved her. I thought she loved me. I'm so sorry, son. No, he shook his head. Don't apologize. You saved my life. Now, let's finish this. Are you sure? You don't have to do anything now. You can rest, recover. He looked at me with a determination I recognized as my own. She tried to kill me. I want to see her pay. I called Jessica immediately. Jamal is awake, and he's ready to testify. Perfect, Jessica's voice was triumphant. Because I have news. The district attorney's office has agreed to file formal charges against Serena and Dwayne, insurance fraud, attempted homicide, conspiracy. And with Jamal's testimony, the case is rock solid. When? Tomorrow. They're issuing the arrest warrants tomorrow morning. I looked at my son, still weak, but with fire in his eyes. There's a better way, I said. A way for her to completely incriminate herself. What do you have in mind? A trap. The final trap. The plan was simple, but brilliant. Jessica had designed it with a surgeon's precision. Jamal officially remained in a coma, according to hospital records. Only Dr. Bell, Jessica, Mark, and I knew he had woken up. To all other intents and purposes, Jamal Henderson was still unconscious in the ICU. Jessica called Attorney Vance. Counselor, I have important news. My client, Mr. Charles Henderson, after much consideration and conversations with the doctors, has accepted that there is no reasonable hope for his son's recovery. I could hear the surprise in the attorney's voice through the speaker. Are you saying he's going to withdraw his objection? Not exactly. We're proposing a settlement. Mr. Henderson will permit the disconnection of life support under certain specific conditions. What conditions? First, he wants a full audit of Jamal's assets before proceeding. Second, he wants your client to sign documents waiving any claim to the life insurance payout until the financial investigation is complete. And third, he wants a final face-to-face meeting with your client to discuss arrangements. There was a silence as Attorney Vance processed this. I need to consult with my client, of course, but counselor, whatever your decision, make it soon. Mr. Henderson is suffering and wants to end this one way or another. The answer came 2 hours later. Serena agreed to all conditions. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. the next day at Jessica's office. That night, Mark installed hidden cameras and microphones in Jessica's conference room. Everything would be recorded, documented, preserved. She's coming with her lawyer, I told Jessica. How are we going to get her here to talk freely? Trust me, Jessica smiled. I have a plan for that, too. I arrived at Jessica's office an hour early the next day. Jamal was already there, sitting in an adjacent room connected to a portable heart monitor. The doctors had insisted he shouldn't be out of the hospital, but Jamal had been adamant. I need to see her, he'd said. I need to look her in the eye when she realizes she lost. At exactly 2 p.m., Serena arrived with Attorney Vance. Serena was dressed in black, appropriately somber for a widow about to make the most difficult decision of her life. But her eyes, when they swept the conference room, were bright with ill-concealed anticipation. Jessica and I were seated on one side of the long mahogany table. Serena and her lawyer sat opposite. "Thank you for coming," Jessica began professionally. "As we discussed, Mr. Henderson has agreed to withdraw his objection to the disconnection of life support under certain conditions." "We understand," Attorney Vance said. "My client is prepared to cooperate with the financial audit and has brought the signed insurance waiver documents." "Excellent." Jessica took the papers. "Mr. Henderson, is there anything you'd like to say before we proceed?" I looked at Serena directly in the eyes. "Yes. I want to know why." Serena blinked, her mask of grief faltering for a second. Why what, Charlie? Why wasn't Jamal enough for you? He loved you. He gave you everything." "Charlie, I don't think this is appropriate," Attorney Vance began. "It's a simple question," I interrupted. "My son is about to die. Don't I deserve to know why his wife is so eager to let him go?" Serena composed herself, tears conveniently appearing in her eyes. "Because I don't want him to suffer, Charlie. Because I know Jamal wouldn't want to live like this, connected to machines. It's what he would have wanted." "Is it truly?" My voice was soft, dangerously soft. "Or is it because you want to collect $600,000? Attorney Vance immediately stood up. "That's enough, Mr. Henderson. These accusations are out of line." Then the conference room door opened, and Jamal walked in. The effect was like detonating a bomb in the room. Serena went completely white, the color draining from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes widened with pure, absolute terror. "Hello, Serena," Jamal said, his voice hoarse but firm. Surprise. Attorney Vance looked from Jamal to Jessica, quickly processing the trap they had fallen into. This is a deception, a legal sham. This is justice," Jessica said calmly. "And every word spoken in this room has been recorded." Serena finally found her voice, a high, desperate shriek. "Jamal, you can't. I saw you." "The hospital said what we told them to say." Jamal walked slowly toward the table, his eyes never leaving her face. "I woke up 3 days ago, and Dad told me everything. The emails, the money, Dwayne, the sabotage of my bike." She began shaking her head frantically. No, that's a lie. It's all lies. I love you." "You love me?" Jamal's voice cracked with contained emotion. "You love the millionaire nerd you planned to turn into a bad memory?" Tears began to run down Serena's cheeks, but they were no longer tears of performative sadness. They were tears of pure panic. "I can explain. The emails were taken out of context. Dwayne and I were just friends. Friends who sabotaged my motorcycle together at 2 a.m., Jamal said, pulling a folder and sliding it across the table. "We have the security recordings. We have the guard's testimony. We have the mechanic's report showing the brakes were intentionally filed down." At that moment, the door opened again. 2 men in dark suits entered, badges from the Houston Police Department hanging from their necks. "Serena Miller Henderson," the first one said, "you are under arrest for attempted felony murder, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent." But Serena was no longer listening. She had completely collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, her entire mask of composure shattered. Attorney Vance, to her credit, remained professional to the end. "My client will say nothing further without my presence." As the officers handcuffed Serena and led her out of the room, she looked at me one last time, and in that gaze, I saw the exact moment she understood the complete truth. It wasn't just that Jamal was alive. It wasn't just that her plan had failed. It was that she had been beaten at her own game by a retired accountant and a father who refused to give up. The last I saw of her, she was being led down the hallway, handcuffed, weeping, completely broken. The game was over, and she had lost. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal activity. Serena and Dwayne were formally charged with a list of crimes that would have taken a full page to enumerate. The evidence we had collected was overwhelming. The emails, the bank transfers, the security recordings, the testimony of the guard and the mechanic, and of course the recording of the meeting in Jessica's office, where Serena had fatally incriminated herself by failing to deny the accusations and panicking in front of a living Jamal. Her lawyers tried to negotiate a plea deal. They offered that Serena would plead guilty to fraud if they dropped the attempted murder charges. Jessica rejected the offer without even consulting us. "No deals," she said firmly. "They will face every charge, and they will pay for every one of them." The trial was swift. With all the documented evidence, the defense had nowhere to hide. They tried to argue that the money transfers had been authorized, but Serena's own emails, admitting to stealing from Jamal, destroyed that theory. They tried to suggest the motorcycle sabotage had been carried out by someone else, but the devastating testimony of the security guard who had seen them that night was lethal. Jamal testified on the second day of the trial. Seeing him sit in the witness box, still weak but unbroken, recounting how he had trusted this woman with his life and his future, was one of the most painful and proud moments of my life as a father. When the prosecutor asked him how he felt knowing his wife had tried to assassinate him, Jamal showed no emotion, only a cold, resolute calm. "I feel betrayed," he said simply. "But more than that, I feel grateful. Grateful that my father never gave up, that he saw what I was too blind to see, and grateful to be alive, to make sure she faces justice." The verdict came after only 3 hours of deliberation. Guilty on all counts. Serena completely collapsed when the verdict was read. Her sobs filled the courtroom. But this time, there was no sympathy on the jurors' faces, only disgust. The sentencing was handed down weeks later. The judge, a severe woman in her 60s with no patience for greed and cruelty, was implacable. "Mrs. Miller," she said, looking down from the bench, "you not only attempted to murder your husband for money, you did so in the coldest, most calculated manner imaginable. You conspired, you planned, you sabotaged, and when your first attempt failed, you attempted to finish the job by manipulating the medical system to pull his life support. You showed no mercy. You showed no remorse until you were caught. I sentence you to 18 years in federal prison for attempted felony murder, plus 6 years for insurance fraud, to be served consecutively, 24 years in total. And when you are released, you will be immediately deported to Jamaica, your country of origin." Serena tried to say something, but her voice was lost in her sobs. Dwayne received 12 years as an accomplice. His defense that he was only in love and manipulated fell on deaf ears when the prosecutor showed that he had been paid $50,000 for his participation in the sabotage. When it was all over, when they were led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, I turned to Jamal. "It's finished," I said. "Not completely," he replied. "There's still something I need to do." The following months were about healing. Jamal, despite all his trauma, made a remarkable recovery. The doctors called it near miraculous, considering the severity of his accident. Physically, he healed well. The ribs mended, the clavicle repaired. He was only left with scars, physical reminders of what he had survived. Emotionally, it was more complicated. There were good days and bad days. Days when he could laugh at something on television, and days when I would find him simply sitting, staring into space, processing the fact that the person he had trusted the most had tried to kill him. He started therapy with a psychologist specializing in trauma and betrayal. Slowly, he began to process not only what Serena had done, but also the signs he had ignored, the red flags he had rationalized. "How did I not see it, Dad?" he asked me one night while we were having dinner at my place. All those months, she was transferring my money, planning with Dwayne. How was I so blind? "You're not blind for loving someone," I told him. "You're human." She was a consummate actress. She fooled everyone, not just you. But you saw her. You always knew something was wrong. "I have 40 years of experience seeing through masks," I replied. "And yes, I never fully trusted her. But I never imagined she was capable of this. No one did." We worked together to recover his money. The offshore accounts were frozen, and eventually the money was repatriated. Of the $320,000 that had been stolen, we recovered $280,000. The rest had been spent on the luxury life Serena and Dwayne had been living. Jamal made a surprising decision with the recovered money. "I want to donate $100,000, he told me, "to a foundation that helps victims of financial fraud and domestic violence. I want something good to come out of this." "Son, that money is yours. You earned it. You got it back." "I got it back because of you," he interrupted. "And I want to use it to help other people who didn't have a father like you, people who are being scammed by partners they trust and have no one to fight for them." Thus was born the Jamal Henderson Foundation for Victims of Spousal Fraud. With that $100,000 initial capital, the foundation began offering free legal services, forensic financial investigation, and psychological support to victims of fraud by their spouses. I joined as a volunteer financial director. It was my way of channeling everything I had learned in this terrible process into something constructive. Months after the trial, Jamal and I were sitting on my back patio, drinking coffee, and watching the sunset over Houston. "Do you know what the strange thing is?" Jamal said suddenly. "I don't hate her." I looked at him, surprised. "No, I don't. I was angry for a long time, furious. But my therapist helped me understand that hate only poisons me. Serena is going to spend the next 24 years in prison. That is her consequence. I don't need to carry the weight of hate on top of everything else." "You're wiser than me," I admitted. "I still feel rage when I think about her." "Because you're my dad," he smiled. "And fathers are always going to want to protect their children, even when the children are grown." "Especially when they're grown," I corrected. "The dangers are bigger." Jamal took a thoughtful sip of his coffee. "Do you know what hurt the most about all of this? It wasn't the money, not even the attempted murder. Although that was horrific. It was realizing that 2 years of my life were a lie. Every kiss, every "I love you," every plan for the future. It was all fake." "Not everything was fake," I said softly. "Your love was real. Your feelings were real. The fact that she didn't reciprocate them doesn't make your experience less valid. My therapist says the same thing." He smiled weakly. "Okay, you're both right. But Dad, there's something I've never properly told you." "What is it?" He turned to look at me directly. "Thank you for not giving up. For investigating when everyone else thought you were being paranoid. For saving my life. Not once, but twice. First by stopping Serena from pulling the plug, and then by building the case that put her in prison." I felt my throat tighten with emotion. You're my son. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you. I know. And that makes me one of the luckiest men in the world, because there are a lot of people who don't have anyone fighting for them. Many Serenas who get away with it because there's no Charles Henderson unraveling their lies. That's why the foundation exists now, I said. So there are more people fighting for the victims. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun sink behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Will you ever trust anyone again? I asked softly. Romantically, I mean. Jamal considered the question carefully. Yes, he finally said. Someday. But it's going to take time. And it's going to have to be someone who understands that I need to go slowly. Someone who is willing to earn my trust gradually. That person exists, I assured him. And when you find her, she'll be worth the wait. In the meantime, he smiled, I have the foundation, I have my job, and I have you. You'll always have me, I promised. It's been a year since the trial. Jamal has made a complete recovery, both physically and emotionally. He's back at his job as a software engineer, though now with a renewed appreciation for life and genuine relationships. The Jamal Henderson Foundation has helped 14 victims of spousal fraud in its first year, recovering over $800,000 in stolen assets and securing 3 additional convictions against scammers. Serena is serving her sentence at the Federal Correctional Complex in Beaumont, Texas. We have had no contact with her, nor will we. That door is permanently closed. This morning, I received a letter from the prison warden. Serena had requested permission to write to me. The letter, according to the warden, was an apology. She wanted me to know she was remorseful, that she had found God in prison, that she understood the harm she had caused. I tore up the letter without reading it, not because I couldn't forgive, but because her repentance, real or false, was not my responsibility. My responsibility was my son, and that responsibility I had fulfilled. This afternoon, Jamal and I are at a small, quiet lake about an hour outside Houston, Lake Conroe. It's the same lake where I used to bring him fishing when he was a boy. The waters are calm, reflecting the perfect blue sky. We cast our lines in comfortable silence. We don't talk about the past. We don't talk about Serena, the trial, or the foundation. We simply exist together, father and son, enjoying the simple peace of a perfect day. Jamal catches a small fish, holds it briefly, admiring the silver scales glittering in the sun, before gently releasing it back into the water. Why did you let him go? I ask. Because he deserves to live, he says simply. Just like I deserve to live. Just like everyone deserves to live, no matter what others plan. In that moment, looking at my son, alive, healthy, at peace, I understand something profound. Justice isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about protecting the innocent. It's about giving them a second chance to live the lives that were almost stolen from them. And sometimes, when you're lucky, it's about a father who refused to surrender and a son who refused to be a victim. The sun is warm on our shoulders. The lake waters gently lap against our small boat. And in this perfect moment, all the pain and fear and rage of the past year feel like distant echoes of a storm that has finally passed. I love you, Dad, Jamal says suddenly. I love you, son, I reply, my voice thick with emotion. And in those simple words, in the peaceful silence surrounding us, I find everything I ever looked for. The security that my son is alive, well, and exactly where he's supposed to be. Sometimes that's more than enough. End of narrative content. This story teaches us that a parent's love knows no bounds when it comes to protecting their children. It shows us that intuition, combined with professional knowledge and unshakable determination,
can dismantle even the most carefully constructed plans. Charles Henderson reminds us that it is never too late to fight for the truth, no matter how powerful the forces opposing us may seem. And Jamal teaches us that survival is not only physical, but also emotional, learning to let go of hate and build something positive from tragedy. Did you like my story? And which cities are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.